I want to speak a little bit about what you offer, what you do in the world. So much wealth that you bring to the table, just in regards to your experience and the richness of your life.
I had lived a lot of life up until 18 and seen a lot of things. I was living a fast life, and he really came and said, if you don't change, like, you're gonna die on this path. One of the most significant things that have shaped my life has actually been my own journey of suffering, of disharmony, of challenges with my own health.
What do rites of passage initiation, what does that mean to you? And why is it so important?
I think rites of passage is an art form of being human that's been lost in the modern age.
I wonder what you think would be possible if everyone, young people, men, women, had the opportunity to experience rites of passage in their lives and initiation in their lives.
It's a primary key for what we're facing in these times. The gateway for humans to remember that they're sacred. And once you awaken that remembrance of your origins and empower people with access to the codes that are already ingrained within them.
Really excited to have you with us, Chun-Mui Miller, everyone. You're one of my dear friends, someone who I respect and admire deeply in your path. I want to speak a little bit about what you offer, what you do in the world. You're a clinically trained herbalist, artist, you're an educator, you're a medicine maker, and truly a guide on this path of remembrance. And I've been lucky enough to be a part of your courses, enjoy your products. You have your apothecary, Remembrance Apothecary, and you're the founder of Reclaiming Radiance. So much wealth that you bring to the table, just in regards to your experience and the richness of your life. So really grateful to have you with us and to dive in.
That's such a great question, and giving me the opportunity to reflect on the journey thus far coming here. And as I think about that question, two really prominent moments come to mind. And the first was really when I was coming of age, when I was 18. And I had lived a lot of life up until 18 and seen a lot of things, and was living in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, and living a very different life than I live now, and was feeling really lost and really was seeking, really seeking to understand the angst that I felt internally, and living a fast life. Like doing a lot of things I wouldn't want my own 18-year-old to be doing. And so one day I woke up, and my grandfather had come into my dreams. And at the time I was drinking, I was smoking. I want to cut this part out. I was living a fast life, and he really came and said, if you don't change, like, you're gonna die on this path. Like, it was very clear. And it was so pronounced that I couldn't ignore it. Like, it really seared into me when I woke up. So that was the first moment, really receiving a message from my own ancestors. Really, I've been so fortunate to have grandparents who were such special people in my life who really took care of me. And so to receive that call from my own family was the first point of action that really something needed to change in my life and my lifestyle, and in the experience that I was having. One of the most significant things that have shaped my life has actually been my own journey of suffering, of disharmony, of challenges with my own health. And sometimes I fantasize that as an herbalist, I would have this like dream story of, I grew up and my grandmother, took me in her garden, and these beautiful stories of lineages of women herbalists. And my story actually comes out of my own journey of healing. I was born in Oakland, California, and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and I've seen and done a lot of things, and that took a toll on both my mind, my life, my experience, and led me to the emergency room at one point. And all of those experiences were really ultimately my greatest teachers, and really learning and led me to my own healing and led me to this path that I'm on now.
One of the places where I think our listeners could benefit from your wisdom is when it comes to rites of passage and initiation. I know you do a lot of work with people who are in transformation in different stages of their lives. And so the first question I want to ask is, what do rites of passage and initiation, what does that mean to you? And why is it so important?
I think rites of passage is an art form of being human that's been lost in the modern age. And I think in a lot of ways, it's actually been intentionally removed from our human experience. Because the value of the rites of passage is really a human experience, a human tool that we've remembered that allows us to access the intelligence of what it means to be human. And it allows us to live in our highest version of ourselves that cultivates societies of higher intelligence, higher levels of care and compassion, and interconnection. And I think we can all agree that in today's landscape, we're pretty much facing all of those things being devoid in our societies as a global species, really. So part of that question is an inquiry for myself, like, why has it been taken away? And I have questions around that because I don't think these are just things that are lost, but I think there has been intention around taking them away. So the importance of rites of passage in their value is so important in these times because we're facing incredible moments that are needed for reparations in our relationship with Earth and creation itself. And it's really requiring humans to be able to access these levels of human capacity. Another thing that I think is important about rites of passage and initiation, I believe it is a tool of remembrance that we've created for ourselves to pass on legacy and ancestral wisdom. And that through the process of rites of passage, we're able to pass along these practices that pass down information from one generation to the next that allow us to tap into our greatest potential.
So earlier you mentioned about how you think rites of passage and initiation is maybe not just lost, but actually something that was stolen or taken away. And I really resonated with that because, to my understanding, rites of passage creates people who know who they are, they're disciplined, they have a sense of purpose, and maybe they're harder to control. And so I wonder what you think would be possible if everyone, young people, men, women, had the opportunity to experience rites of passage in their lives and initiation in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, I get excited even at the thought of that question. I think it's a primary key for what we're facing in these times. I think the rites of passage and initiation are the gateway for humans to remember that they're sacred. And once you awaken that remembrance of your origins and empower people with access to the codes that are already ingrained within them, is when liberation really is possible. And that can be amplified through the process of community participation. So that's one of also the unique parts of rites of passage, is they're not just individual pathways. It really takes your own individual transformation and unique gifts that you have and puts them in the center of community, so that you can see, what is my unique value in the constellation of the world, of all of creation. And so I really believe that this is one of the most powerful things we can do and to be a voice for in the world, is really, what are the practices that are allowing us to remember that we are sacred.
Once upon a time, the norm was that young people were raised by a village. Children were the collective responsibility of the society, and this provided the opportunity for more mentorship and more individualized attention and care. Whereas in the last 2 centuries, the norm in the developed West has become a classroom with one teacher and dozens of students, and children are not getting the same attention and care that they need. One of our goals with Embrace has always been to bridge the generational divides, to build a community that is diverse in age. And while we've been able to do that with elders, I think in a very beautiful way, it's found to be very challenging to bridge that gap between single people and families, between young people and kind of people in the middle. So from your experience as a community leader, as a mother, what can we, as people who are organizing spaces, who are putting on events, like what can we do to bridge that gap and make things friendly for families, truly communities and events that are truly going to cover that gap?
A huge challenge we face today for multiple reasons, and very different than the landscape in which I first became a mother. When I first became a mother, we didn't have social media. The internet was brand new. And we had much more, most of our social engagement was in person, face to face. So we didn't have this digital divide between us. So I can share from that experience of a time period in which we were all much more connected in real time, face to face. The most important, valuable asset that I was a part of and participated in the creation of as a parent and a mother was to create community of shared child care. I didn't raise my kids alone. I raised it in a community in Oakland of more than a dozen other women who were also choosing to prioritize their children at the time and staying home in these young years, and for some of them, all of the years of prioritizing our children. And we also were aware that we couldn't do it alone, that to raise children was a lot of work, and that as much as we loved our children and wanted to do all that we could, there were gaps in what we could provide for them. And we saw in one another gifts and skills and ways that could be shared. And additionally, that our children could have other children their age around them from families that had shared and aligned values, who were neighbors, who were friends, who were family. So one of the things that I think that I see today is missing is community, raising children together, and consciously creating connection and community for children to be raised together. Additionally, I believe if we live in a healthy society where we're creating events and programming that are family friendly, everyone can attend.
If we want to bridge this generational gap and create communities where families and children and the rest of the community can really be in harmony, really be together, and this is the beauty of like the young people getting to see all these different examples of adults, and those adults getting to like have the beauty of what children bring into the space. What are some things that those of us organizing community, those of us organizing events, like what are the challenges we're going to face, and what can you offer us for how we might be able to address that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can and need to be done to bridge that gap. I would say a root core action that we can take is really more in our approach to life. And I think when we are working from the framework of remembrance, coming back to this remembrance, that life is sacred, that we are all sacred, then we interact with our life as sacred. When we create events for community, we are honoring our community as sacred. We are honoring our mothers as sacred. We are honoring our grandmothers and grandfathers as sacred. And not only are we creating space that they can join, but we're honoring that their voices, that their unique role in the community have a function that is important and adds value. So I think there's many actual actions that we can do that. If that means if we want children there, having children-related activities to the theme of the event, etc., things like that. But ultimately, I think at the base, when the intention is held of who are we and what are we really here to do and what kind of world do we want to live in, then I think it informs a lot of how we create the events that we're creating, because they encompass that all life is sacred and therefore all life is welcome.
This is a bit of a personal question, but I think hearing your experience and wisdom will be really valuable for us, which is, what can community do to support single mothers, especially those with sons in our world today?
I think there's two sides of that question. One is supporting the mothers, and one is supporting the sons. And I think for all mothers, but particularly single mothers and single mothers of sons, is making sure that they're resourced, creating resources. Whether those are materially, whether those are service-oriented support, emotional support. There is, on a practical level, that's how there's more of a need for that. On a spiritual, emotional, I should say psycho-spiritual level, I think the greatest thing that we can do to support mothers, single mothers of sons and sons of single mothers, is to heal as a species our expression of the masculine, so that we can create models for boys to see what it is to be a sacred man, and for us to create community where there are more examples of sacred divine masculine for our sons and our young men to see is possible in a world that tells a different story. So I think the greatest thing we can do is to support the healing of our men, and for men to step up and to do their own healing work, and to support the women in their lives, and to really honor the value of the women in their lives so that our young men can understand how to respect women and how to respect earth and life itself.
During this time, many women I've noticed are rising even more, rising up to answer the call. And there's this big theme of reclamation happening. And it's not like new, it's been happening for generations, but it's just hitting like a critical point. And I'm curious to hear from your perspective, because I really love the way that you honor and really channel like the Divine Mother's voice. And so I would love to hear from you just why is it so important for women to rise during this time? Why is it so important for women to really know themselves, trust themselves, be in their power, be in a state of reclamation?
Yeah, as far as that inquiry of like, why now? That part I feel is beyond our doing in a certain sense. There's a piece of it that feels very almost destined, dare I say. But destined in a, when I use the word destiny, I honor that word destiny the way I do science, right? For me, destiny is related to a lineage of creation. And so in the story of women's rising, of women's reclamation, of women's wisdom coming to the forefront at this time, is interrelated to many, many, many generations of women who have come before us. And so while at this time, we're hearing it more than ever, we are women, we are descendants of mothers, of grandmothers, of great-grandmothers, of women going all the way back to the beginning of time when the understanding of the power of the sacred feminine was understood as its role in creation. And why I think it's this movement of reclamation is happening now at this time is more of an illumination of the divide of that truth, of women remembering, of women being honored for the role that they play in the sacred wheel of life. And so as we experience this time period where women are deeply not honored, deeply not valued, and in many ways degraded as women, right? The way that we are depicted in our sexuality and our sensuality, that role in society that it plays, our role as mothers, as elders, as grandmothers, none of those things are respected in this day and time. And even more so than not valued, a lot of it has been bastardized. We have things like pornography that has taken one of the most beautiful parts of the sacred feminine and made it something that has destroyed a species in our human psyche, that has made created a lot of dis-ease and disharmony in our interrelationships between men and women. So I think the reason now that reclamation is so important is this exposure of the distance of truth that we've arrived at today. And it's so important now more than ever, before it's too late.
Chun-Mui, we were just talking about the rise of the feminine and the need for it now. But could we just actually even just double tap on what does divine feminine, and like we like to talk about the sacred feminine, what does that actually mean? Could you demystify that for people? Because it gets kind of tossed around and it gets confusing of what does it mean, or at least what does it mean to you?
So before I speak to what is sacred feminine or divine feminine, first I just want to speak a little bit to what is feminine, right? Feminine and masculine. And so So just on a very demystifying that concept of what is feminine and masculine, really we're speaking about energetics, right? What are feminine energetics, vibrational patterns in the atmosphere that vibrate at certain patterns, and what are masculine vibrations, right? And so when we're speaking of feminine patterns, we're speaking to very specific frequencies that attune to certain qualities, right? So these are the qualities of life that we're tuning into. These are the more inward qualities. These are qualities of listening, of receptivity, of creation, of the qualities of the wisdom in the core of the earth, right? These are particular frequencies that we're speaking of when we're speaking of the feminine. And when we add in front of feminine, either divine or sacred, we're really remembering the highest vibrational pattern of these frequencies, right? So when we're speaking about feminine quality vibrations and they are sacred, they're done in their most harmonic patterns.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about just that these are energetics, right? Like I think of them as like solar, lunar, yin and yang. And really I think that they create a sense of wholeness. And so community is such a big, like it's a value of both of ours. It's so critical for our survival and our thriving as a species. What do you see specifically of the role of the sacred feminine in community? What are the gifts that the sacred feminine brings to the wholeness of a community?
The role of the sacred feminine has been preserved and carried on by women for generations. Women have historically been the keepers of rituals, of rites of passage, keepers of the earth body's wisdom that is designed in the intelligence of our own bodies, our own earth bodies. And our role in society as divine feminine wisdom keepers, meaning this intelligence encoded within our womb spaces, within our heart spaces, brings to community the wisdom of the earth herself. How does creation thrive? How do we create interdependent, interconnected, mutually beneficial relationships? Our greatest teacher on this planet is Mother Earth herself. And when we look into nature, when we look into Mother Nature, we see that the plants, the flowers, the trees have figured it out. How to deal with biodiversity, how to deal with shared resources, shared information, shared infrastructure and networks. The earth has figured all of that out. And so women inherently have this wisdom encoded in their own earth bodies that through the practices that have been carried on for generations since antiquity, help us to tap in to that internal wisdom of the earth's wisdom herself.
So I'm just receiving so much from what you're sharing and like really so grateful for you to kind of just clear things up. I think it gets a little bit confusing out here for women and men of like how to be, how to live, how to lead, how to love. And, you know, having watched your path and knowing that, you know, you've gone through different moments in your life of going really deep more into your feminine and then at this point in time kind of really integrating the masculine more and really just on your path of wholeness. And so I'd love to just hear about kind of what that's been like to explore these different parts of you and then to come into like an integrated being and what you might share with others who are also kind of trying to find their way and find their own sense of wholeness.
We all have feminine energy and we all have masculine energy. And it's important for us to understand our own vibrational patterns and how to bring those into balance. Once we can bring those into balance in ourselves, we can really come into balance in our relationship with others. But it begins here first. So, for example, for myself, many, many years of my journey and kind of most comfortable, most intuitively, most naturally for me was to develop my feminine attributes, to do my feminine healing work, to develop my feminine artistic gifts, felt the most natural for me. So one might say I would have more feminine proclivity, right? Or I would have more feminine, I would lean more into the feminine. What I was finding is that while I was able to go really deep into the feminine aspects of myself, the missing attention to my masculine was creating an imbalance that was creating internal imbalance.
One of the biggest challenges that I've seen for myself and for other spiritual leaders or people who feel called to be spirit-led is this tension between, cool, I'm answering the call, I know what my purpose is, I feel like I'm finding my gifts, my artistry, and yet we live in this material reality that has a lot of distortion and it has a lot of conditions that make it sometimes really difficult to pursue that kind of path. And there's this tension, right, that I feel between the spiritual and material worlds. I've also seen a lot of like integration of the two. I've seen people really thrive in both roles as well. But it is a challenge, and sometimes it can feel like, oh, maybe I should just give up these gifts that feel divinely appointed so that I can make money over here. Or I'm suffering and leaving my soul at the door at work, and there's this confusion. So I would just love to hear, not looking for an answer necessarily, but just like, what's been your experience with navigating the spiritual and material worlds?
Yeah, this is a personal one. This is one that is most certainly an initiation. When you say yes to walking an authentic path. So it's one I am navigating, and it brings up multiple things. One, my own relationship to abundance. So it's a teacher in that what really is abundance, right? We have such a one-dimensional relationship to what abundance is in this society and culture, and really it's around money, that we're so far from really understanding what abundance is, right? And so even when we expand into abundance of like beyond money, it could be an abundance of love, an abundance of friendship, an abundance of health, these other things. Even beyond there, like what really are the qualities of abundance? I think as I'm walking and learning from abundance itself, is that it serves even greater purpose than we're even touching. Which to me, where I'm at this point in my path with abundance right now is that it isn't just about how much is available for me to receive, but more importantly, it feels important, how much do we have to give? And I think when we shift our relationship and ask that question, it really changes also our relationship to how we are creating abundance. What are we creating? Why are we creating abundance? Is an even bigger question than how to create the abundance. For me, it's really important of why is abundance important, so that I can feel aligned with doing that on my own terms. and in my own way.
So Chun-Mui, it's been so good to have you with us. You, like, every time you open your mouth, I'm just so attentive and I'm just really taking it all in. And so it's been such a gift to hear a bit of the well of wisdom you have to share and your perspective on all these various pieces of life's puzzle. So just thank you. So much appreciation, gratitude, and blessings on your path, on your journey. And yeah, feeling so much love.
Thank you so much for this invitation and this work that you're putting out into the world. I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Thanks, love.